All right, so Senator Bernard Sanders is back at it again, using his position at the top of the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee in order to try to force the CEO of Starbucks, this guy Howard Schultz, who is a demon if there ever was one, forcing him to come in and testify before the Senate, even going so far as to try to use his subpoena power. And so there's going to be a vote on this next week, but I want to read some of the details here just to start us off from this Axios article breaking it all down. Okay, so they say Senator Bernard Sanders says that he is moving to subpoena Starbucks interim CEO Howard Schultz to testify about the company's lack of compliance with labor laws. Yeah, that's a little bit of an understatement if you ask me, but sure, they have absolutely been violating the National Labor Relations Act left and right. We're going to get to a couple of different examples of that here in a second, but just rampantly doing illegal union busting as well as, bad faith contract negotiations with some of the unions that have successfully formed in ways that absolutely should be deserving of him having to answer to some of these things that he's been doing. But they say the Starbucks unionization effort has become one of the most high-profile labor battles in the country, and while hundreds of stores have voted to unionize, they've so far been unable to land a first contract. I mean, think about that. Hundreds of stores have voted to unionize. Not a single one of them has actually gotten a contract with the Starbucks Corporation. Okay, again, that's entirely because of bad faith negotiation and stalling from the corporate side of this equation in these negotiations. I mean, that in and of itself should be considered a crime, right? But they continue saying that Starbucks has aggressively tried to fend off unionization. Yes, absolutely. They say the National Labor Relations Board has lodged 77 complaints against the company since around 2019 for unfair labor practices like illegally firing workers or threatening and intimidating them, and that appears to be the most complaints filed by the board against a company in recent history. Okay, so one of the worst abusers of labor law in this country, okay, is Starbucks. All right, and keep in mind, I mean, again, we're talking about since 2019. It's also important to point out that this is what you get as a result of actually putting in place competent officials and people who are nominally on the side of labor in this top position within the National Labor Relations Board, right? I mean, I've talked about this on this channel. If I was going to give Joe Biden credit for something that actually makes a difference in people's lives, it would be, appointing the people that he did to the NLRB, because they've actually been trying to challenge corporate power, even though they still have limited resources and limited funding and limited staffing. But so far, they've been doing a pretty good job of it, right? So they say Schultz has declined to appear before Sanders' committee last month. Okay, so Bernie put out like a voluntary invite to Howard Schultz. Of course, he turned around, he declined that. He didn't want to have to come and face the heat. And so now he's threatening to basically subpoena him and force him to come in. But they say that the company offered to send a lower ranking executive to appear in his place, explaining that a new CEO, Laxman Simham, is taking the helm in April. And they say Starbucks has previously said that it isn't violating labor law and that any assertions about anti-union activity are false. Okay, so they're just completely denying it. I mean, first of all, they point out here that maybe Howard Schultz is not going to be here for that much longer. I think they indicate he's probably leaving somewhere within April, so he might be on his way out, but it doesn't really make a difference because you could slot in any number of other potential candidates into this CEO slot, and Starbucks is going to be doing the same goddamn shit because this is what every corporation does in the United States. We saw this with Amazon. We've seen this with every other high-profile example. When workers try to collectively organize and form a union, they are going to try to sabotage that because that might hurt the bottom line for these companies, right? It might diminish the amount that they are shoveling out to wealthy Wall Street shareholders because, oh, God forbid, you might have to actually spend some more investing in the workers who are providing all of the labor value that makes you filthy rich. I mean, again, it seems like it should be something basic that everybody should understand, but this is fundamental to the capitalist system. It's not unique to Howard Schultz. He's just the guy who's in this top position right now and needs to answer for this, especially given the fact that he has been the CEO during this massive wave of illegal union busting activity that Starbucks has been putting on display. And again, it's just kind of fucking hilarious to come out here and actually give a public statement saying that any allegations of anti-union behavior, I mean, not even just like illegal union busting activities, but just straight up denying that you've engaged in any anti-union behavior. I mean, like, that's not even a controversy, right? That's not even something that is hidden. We see what these what's discussed within these anti-union propaganda meetings that these captive audience meetings that many workers are forced to go to. Of course you guys are explicitly anti-union. The CEO, Howard Schultz, has been going around and doing multiple interviews over the last couple of months and years explaining why he's against unions in general. I mean, he might not come out and actually say anything that's openly illegal and saying we are going to punish workers if they try to form a union, which is something they absolutely have been doing, but you are publicly against these workers forming these unions. So the idea that you're just going to be like, no, any allegations of this are completely ridiculous. I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing if they just say this shit out loud. But they finish off here, they say, so what they're saying, for nearly a year, and this is Bernie Sanders speaking here, I and many of my colleagues in the Senate have repeatedly asked Mr. Schultz to respect the constitutional right of workers at Starbucks to form a union and stop violating federal labor laws, Sanders said in a statement on Wednesday. And he continued saying, Mr. Schultz has failed to respond to those requests. He has denied meeting and document requests, skirted congressional oversight attempts, and refused to answer any of the serious questions that we have asked. Unfortunately, Mr. Schultz has given us no choice but to subpoena him. Okay, so again, pretty, boss man move here from Bernie Sanders. But I want to read a little bit more from this quote that he actually put out in this press release that he gave. So here from Bernie Sanders directly sort of giving us more context in terms of why this is so important, specifically centering around Starbucks, but also just to confront corporate power and basically their, carte blanche, their complete ability to be able to get away with whatever the fuck they want when it comes to busting up these unions. So he says, while Howard Schultz is a multi-billionaire who runs a very profitable multinational corporation, he must understand that he and his company are not above the law. The NLRB has filed over 75 complaints against Starbucks for violating federal labor law, and there have been over 500 unfair labor practice charges logged against the company. 500 unfair labor practices, okay? These violations include the illegal firing of more than a dozen Starbucks workers. And for nearly a year, I and many of my colleagues in the Senate have repeatedly asked him to respect the constitutional right, again, of these workers at Starbucks to form a union and to stop violating these federal labor laws. Mr. Schultz, again, repeatedly failed to respond to those requests. He has denied meetings and document requests, skirted congressional oversight attempts, and refused to answer any of the serious questions that we have asked. He's given us no choice but to subpoena him. A multi-billion-dollar corporation like Starbucks cannot continue to break federal labor law with impunity. The time has come to hold Starbucks and Mr. Schultz accountable. Okay, and he's 100% correct. And then they finish off here basically pointing out that next Wednesday, March 8th at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, they're going to be holding this vote and basically like hearings within the Senate to decide on whether or not they are going to actually follow through and subpoena him. Now, what is the result of that vote going to be? The outcome of that is going to be pretty revealing and interesting, right? Are we going to have some corporate Democrats like Kirsten Sinema, or I guess now that she's an independent, has left the Democratic Party, right? But, other corporate Democrats as well, like Joe Manchin and the rest of them, and Republicans as well. Are they going to vote in favor of getting Howard Schultz, this subpoena and forcing him to come in? Honestly, I have my doubts. Wouldn't be surprised at all if this is some sort of a, pro-corporate bipartisan attempt to shut down this push from Bernie Sanders to try to actually have some accountability for corporate America for engaging in just rampant illegal behavior. But we'll see what the outcome of that is. I'll follow up with this next Wednesday. But now I just want to remind you guys of some of the recent, filings that the NLRB has been pushing against Starbucks with these allegations of illegal anti-union activities. So just a couple examples here. This one from Bloomberg Law. Starbucks illegally threatened workers, NLRB judge rules. Starbucks Corporation made a series of illegal threats to its workers during a union election drive at its signature Seattle roastery, a National Labor Relations Board judge ruled. The company violated federal labor law by telling workers that it would be futile for them to join a union. I mean, real just like open villain shit here. It would be futile for you to try to form this union here. They say Starbucks also unlawfully threatened to reduce or end benefits benefits if workers voted to unionize, and said that it would prioritize non-union stores while those with unions would miss out on added benefits. I mean, again, they're openly saying this, right? This is not something that's up in the air. We don't really know what's going on behind closed doors. This is all publicly available information. And again, go back to what they were saying before. There's no validity to the idea that we are against these union drives or something like that coming from these statements from Starbucks as a corporation. Meanwhile, actually behind the scenes, what are they doing? Just violating the law left and right and trying to, divide and conquer all of these different workers who are trying to engage in collective organizing to make demands for better benefits, better working conditions, better wages, etc. So that's just one example. I mean, we've had so many other ones that I've been covering on this channel over about the last year or so. Here was another one. NLRB administrative law judge finds that Starbucks illegally retaliated against 2 Philadelphia baristas. And so this is something Bernie Sanders was just pointing out, right? You've had tons of different workers, dozens of workers who have been illegally fired for attempting to form these unions. And part of the problem with this equation here is that the punishments for violating labor law as they are just rampantly, right, over the last couple of months, the punishment is like damn near nothing. I mean, we've had some examples, I think there was one with Amazon where, the manager had to come out and read this whole statement about we're sorry for doing this, that, and the third with anti-union meetings and lying to you guys a bunch of different times, right? They had to do like an embarrassing meeting in front of the workers and admit that they were lying to them and that they were trying to propagandize them against the union. But in terms of like actual meaningful fines, I mean, it's basically nothing, right? If the equation from the corporation, right, from the corporate side of this that really only cares about maximizing profits to shareholders, if the equation is that we have two different choices. One is to give in to the union, right? Allow them to form this union, negotiate in good faith, get a contract that gives them better wages, better benefits, better working conditions, etc. That's option number one. That's going to cost us significantly more money than it would if we went with option number two and just violated labor law, refused to negotiate in good faith with these labor unions that have successfully formed, and just take the fines on the back end from the NLRB, right? Because the fines are just not enough for this to actually be a legitimate threat. I mean, that's how you end up with 500 or more different various individual complaints that Starbucks has been facing. Here was just one other one. They say Starbucks illegally refused union contract talks at 21 cafes, the NLRB says. So it's not even just the 21. I mean, this was just one specific example back from December of last year. But I mean, again, you've had all of these different unionized stores that have been forming, and basically none of them have actually secured an actual contract. So what does that tell you? It tells you, again, they're not negotiating in good faith. And one other thing before I show you the map of where we currently stand with this, nationwide drive for unionization at Starbucks. Just as a reminder, this guy Howard Schultz, this anti-union, pro-corporate demon, was literally going to be Hillary Clinton's pick for labor secretary if she was elected president back in 2016. I mean, think about that for a second, right? I mean, how much of a corrupt motherfucker do you have to be to consider this guy to be your labor secretary? I mean, you have to be openly anti-worker in order to even consider that for a fraction of a second, right? But I'm going to finish off here just showing you guys for a little bit of hopium, right? Because not only do we have Senator Bernard Sanders trying to subpoena the CEO of Starbucks, if he actually managed to get him in, that would be amazing. I would love to see him get grilled by Bernie Sanders. Maybe there's a couple other senators who could pitch in and, have some good questions as well, but would absolutely love to see that. But on top of that good news that we just got, we also have this, as pointed out here by More Perfect Union. They've been tracking this since the beginning. This one was last updated just yesterday, I think. Starbucks workers are brewing up unions across the country. Workers at 373 stores in 40 states have filed to unionize. 373 stores in 40 states. Dozens of elections are underway or coming up despite Starbucks' aggressive anti-union campaign. So far, 288 Starbucks stores in 37 states have won union elections compared to just 68 stores that have lost their elections. So given how the deck is stacked against workers in these types of situations, it's honestly miraculous that they have had this good of a ratio here of wins to losses in terms of pushing with these union drives. So I mean, again, 100% solidarity to all of the workers, not just at Starbucks but across the entire country, who are trying to figure out this process of trying to get a union at their individual workplace. I talk about this all the time on this channel because I think that this is like a vitally important, core fundamental piece of any sort of leftist movement that we are trying to build in this country. You absolutely need to have collective worker organization. Okay, you have to have an organized and cohesive labor movement so that workers at individual Starbucks stores or in individual industries can make demands from their employers, from the capitalist class. But also, this helps the broader American economy as well. Even if you're not part of a union, if some other workers are forming a union, that is going to raise the floor. It is going to benefit you as well. So showing solidarity with these workers, it's not even just a matter of principle. This is how we actually uplift the American working class in a broad and sustainable way in this country. And so again, I hope that he actually succeeds in getting this subpoena, but I will keep you guys updated next week. Again, on Wednesday at 10, we're going to know this. So hopefully I can have a video out later that day. We'll get to see, how much of a, corporate stooge some of these Democrats and Republicans want to be. Are they going to side with this, basically criminal level union buster with the CEO of Starbucks, Howard Schultz, or are they going to nominally stand on the side of the workers and at least force him to ask or to answer questions for some of his criminal behavior?
Everyone is saying good Politic guy has the best Politic. Believe me, no one does it like him. Believe me, everyone is saying